to start with you, Reem. You wrote a little article a little while ago about nothing here for the young people. Talk to me about it. Why'd you write that?
Well, exactly. It was following Jeremy Hunt's budget at the end of last year, and essentially I called it intergenerational theft, because that's what it is. The government had promised the triple lock on pensions, had promised further government spending, and all of this would, of course, be paid for by the hard-working young taxpayers like myself. And so I thought that it's incredibly unfair. We now have the highest tax burden in 70 years. I honestly do not blame people, young people especially, if they think they sort of assess their prospects and see, OK, in the United Kingdom, there is nothing for me. Let's go elsewhere.
Well, Reem, who do you think paid for your schooling then?
My schooling, it was
the old people.
Of course, it's through the taxpayers.
People,
however,
yes.
We've got the highest tax burden in 70 years now.
When you get older, then it's your turn. It's your turn to pay for the other people.
But we're paying more than they ever were.
That's what you think. You heard of inflation, right? It's not worth as much. Right, let's speak to the Australian High Commissioner, Alexander Downer. Thank you very much, Alexander, for joining us. So what's your thoughts then? Australia? Gosh, I want to go. Talk to me about it.
Yes, well, I think the great advantage of Australia is lifestyle, really. I mean, and of course, all these issues about inflation and taxes and so on are all replicated in Australia. Australia has all of those problems, and does Australia ever have strikes? Of course it does. So you want to have a mature judgment made about moving to another country. Wages, real wages, including taking into account differences in purchasing power, are a little bit higher in Australia. And the quality of life is fantastic. There's no doubt about that. On average, the weather is better, though it can be incredibly hot or incredibly cold. So it's not always good weather. But it's also a very harmonious sort of society, Australia. I mean, you know, there are the usual party political debates that you get here, and you've been hearing here on this program. But beyond that, it's a fairly harmonious sort of country, and it works well. So, and people speak English, and culturally, it is very familiar to people who have come from the UK. So there are many advantages, but it's isolated, remember? Australia is a long way from the UK and from other countries.
Some people would be probably quite glad that they can get as far away as possible. Let's go to our media writer at the Australian, Sophie Ellsworth. Sophie, is it really that amazing? I mean, Australia sounds great, but surely there are people, a lot of Australians come to this country, though.
Oh, absolutely. Look, the UK is incredibly appealing to a lot of Australians, but for the British viewers who are not familiar with Australia, as Alexander said, we have, some great beaches, some beautiful weather. But let me just point out that the West Australian government that is trying to recruit these British workers, Western Australia is on obviously the western side of the country. Now, I'm in Melbourne. Perth, the capital in Western Australia, that's 3,500 kilometres away. Perth is really regarded almost as another country within Australia. It's a long way away. It's quite isolated, but it is a magnificent place, Western Australia. I just spent some time over Christmas there. Amazing beaches. You've got, you've got the Kimberleys as well. You've got desert. You've got all different terrain. Australia is a great place to live. I feel like we really are effectively an extension of the UK, but we come with our challenges as well. We're battling inflation at about 8%. We've got unemployment at 3.8%. We face cost of living challenges as well. So yes, it is a great quality of life, but it's not cheap to live here at the moment. We're coming under the same pressures that you guys in the UK are coming under.
Thank you. Austin, what's your take on this?
Yeah, well, that is the thing. I mean, as the last person was saying there, Australia isn't without its issues. Of course, it faces challenges, just like people here in the United Kingdom face. I think the problem, however, is that people here feel that can things get much worse? I mean, when you look at our projected economic growth, when you look at the rate of inflation, people are really feeling the pinch now. We're talking about what can big businesses do. Well, a lot of businesses give cost of living payments. I know businesses are giving people free lunches in order to try and help with these kind of things. But that's not sustainable in the long term. What we need is proper economic change. The problem the Tories have got is that since Liz Truss tried to implement economic change, the markets went crazy and people don't trust the Tories anymore. And the problem with Keir Starmer is that he doesn't seem to have any policies. He's just sitting waiting to win the election because the Tories are doing so badly, and that's not the way to lead. What we need is a proper economic plan put forward by the Labour Party, and so that the markets can get used to that idea, so that when they do come to government, that it's not going to shock the markets and we can actually start to turn the economy around. But the Tories aren't going to be able to do it because they don't trust him anymore.
Well, Reem, listening to that, does that not? How do you feel? Because basically, Australia has the same pressures that we have in this country. It's not a walk in the park.
Of course, and there are these exact pressures globally. I mean, the sort of issues with energy, with Russia, Ukraine, those events are affecting all prices across the country and across the world, and that means that those impacts are seen everywhere. But inflation at 8%, I mean, that's significantly lower than inflation in the United Kingdom, and we've been seeing this happen across the past 10 years. We, like I said before, have the highest taxes in 70 years. In Australia, they have significantly lower taxes. And look, we can talk about the political situation, we can talk about all the other issues that definitely occur in Australia, but actually what we're seeing is the difference is that Australia is clearly assessing that there is a problem in the United Kingdom and that there is a demand for people to leave.
Well, I'm going to finish this with Alexandra. Do you think then that really Australia should be working more with the UK rather than, because looking at that, it looks like they're sort of trying to poach a load of our workers, seeing the situation that we're in?
Well, I think it's a good thing if people move both ways. Actually, by the way, the tax burden in Australia isn't much lower than the tax burden in the UK. Unemployment is about the same and the inflation rate is very similar as well. So let's set aside the party political points, although I say one thing for the SNP. There's no political party in Australia which is trying to break the country up. All of the political parties believe in keeping the country together. But look, Australians come over here, and I'm a case in point, because I love living here. It's a fantastic country. It does have a very good standard of living. Unemployment is, of course, at historically low levels in the UK, so it's not difficult for Australians to get jobs here. The people on the whole are just friendly as they are in Australia. One of the things I'd say about the UK is people talk the country down. In Australia, people don't talk the country down, people talk the country up. So one cry I would make to the British people is stop, for God's sake, bagging your own country and painting it as though it's the worst place on earth to live. Because, by the way, there are hundreds of thousands of Australians, something like 400,000 Australians who live in the UK and who love living here.